About 1 year ago, I posted this video saying that Junior Caminero was a star before he played 50 games in the majors. He went from hitting 6 home runs and being worth .7 WAR to 45 home runs and 4.6 WAR. That is quite the breakout. Around the same time, I also posted this video talking about how good Christopher Sanchez will be in 2025, and he would have won the NL Cy Young if it wasn't for Paul Skeens. Now, I know what you're saying. You're probably telling me that I am so smart and I know everything, but in fact, the opposite is true. I'm not actually doing much, the numbers are the ones doing all the hard work. So today I'm putting the numbers back to work and I'm going to go through 1,173 different players and narrow it down to one single breakout candidate. Now, this might sound like a hard task, but with the data available and the data that I have in my possession, it's actually pretty reasonable. We have a lot of work to do, so let's get started. These 1,173 players are made up of 631 hitters and 542 pitchers. Basically everyone who played in the majors last year. These types of players, of course, have completely different data, so let's focus on the hitters first. Here are the 631 possible hitters we could choose. There are some players here that have no chance of breaking out, and it's not because they're bad, it's because they're already too good. Aaron Judge is not going to break out in 2026. By the definition of a breakout, I think that is pretty much impossible. So let's remove everyone who's coming off of a season of at least 6 WAR. We want someone who has some room to grow. This gets us down to 621 position players. Now we get to the real hard part. Who is going to break out? Well, in order to predict the future, we need to learn from the past. So I looked at breakout players from the past 2 years to try to get an idea of what breakout players do in the year before they break out. This list includes players like Bobby Witt Jr. going from 5.9 WAR in 2023 to 10.5 WAR in 2024. It has Elly De La Cruz going from 1.9 to 6.6. It has Hunter Goodman, who went from one of the worst players in the league in 2024 to one of the most productive catchers in 2025. All in all, I identified 42 breakout seasons using data from the past 3 years to help me narrow down our breakout pick. The first clear thing that stood out was age. It's no surprise that the average breakout player was significantly younger than the average MLB player. The average age throughout the league was 28 years old, but the average for a breakout player was 24.2 years old. So the first real step of narrowing it down here is to get rid of all players who are 27 years old or more. Our ideal candidate is going to be younger than 27. This does a noticeable hit to our list, getting it down to 252 players. This is a good base, but from here, there are a couple different routes we can travel. Thanks to the past breakout data that we have, along with some fancy data science stuff and unsupervised clustering algorithms, I know there are roughly 2 different archetypes of breakout players. The first is the hitter. The hitter is someone who is a negative defender but has a high barrel rate, meaning they hit the ball hard and in the air frequently. They also have a relatively high zone contact rate for someone with that high barrel frequency, and the final defining factor is that they pull the ball a lot. Some examples would include 2024 Brent Rooker, 2025 Junior Caminero, and 2025 James Wood. The next type is the all-around type. This player has a high bat speed, good plate discipline, is an above-average base runner, a plus defender, but has some sort of hole in their game offensively. Their launch angle sweet spot percentage is low, meaning a lot of high fly balls or grounders. One small tweak in these guys are stars. This idea is also true for the other archetype. There's usually some sort of hole in the player's game. Think of 2024 Gunnar Henderson, 2025 Jeremy Pena, or 2025 Maikel Garcia. Let's start by narrowing down a hitter. So let's go back to our 252 players and first get the guys with a barrel rate above 11%, the average of this breakout archetype. This gets us down to 67 players. We now need the players who also make contact frequently. You gotta put the ball in play in order to take advantage of the barreling. So let's get rid of the players who have a lower zone contact rate than 84%. The final factor of the hitter archetype was pulling the ball in the air to take full advantage of their hitting abilities. There are a couple ways to do this, but I'm going to use attack direction, which is a bat tracking stat based on where the player makes contact with the ball. In this case, we're going to make the threshold -4 degrees, as that was the average for this archetype. This means that the player is getting out in front of the ball and will allow for more pull side power. This filter leaves us with 10 players. Out of these 10, we need players with room to grow. Ben Rice, Zach Neto, Spencer Torkelson, and obviously Vladimir Guerrero Jr. have already had very productive seasons with the bat, with a WRC plus of at least 115 last year, meaning they were 15% better than the league average hitter. While they still could take another jump, it's less likely for us to see a huge jump in their numbers. So now 6 hitters remain. Our final tool in the tool bag is to find a player with a hole in their game. In this case, we're going to look at the launch angle. Let's remove all players who had an above average launch angle sweet spot percentage compared to the breakouts, which was 32% last year, leaving us with 2, Jack Caglione and Colby Thomas. Both of these players have spent very little time in the majors, and it's largely been unsuccessful. Caglione was one of the worst players in the league last year with a 532 OPS and a negative 1.6 WAR. Thomas had a 684 OPS and a 0 WAR. We've exhausted all of our filtering tools in the major league, so the last decision will come down to minor league performance. In this case, Jack takes the cake by a pretty large margin, meaning he is crowned as the hitter archetype candidate, moving him into the final round. We are far from over. It's now time to run a similar process, this time for a player that fits the all-around archetype that I explained earlier. Let's load back up those 252 players from where we split off and start again. First up on the checklist is a hitter that has an above average bat speed, so let's eliminate all players who have less than an average swing speed of 72 miles per hour. This gets us to 125 hitters. Next, the all-around archetype is typically a plus athlete who is an above average base runner and defender. So let's filter out players who were negative base runners or defenders last year, indicated by less than 0 base running runs or fielding run value. This cuts down a lot of players and gets us down to 26. And now the final steps. I'm going to get rid of players with at least 115 WRC plus again, leaving us with 20 players. Also, just like last time, we'll get rid of anyone who had a launch angle sweet spot percentage of over 32%. That halves our set down to 10. The final thing left on the checklist is plate discipline, which for here we'll use out of zone swing rate, or the rate at which a player swings at pitches outside the strike zone. The threshold we'll use here is 29%, as that was the average number from the prior breakouts. This halves our set again to 5. 3 of these players are coming with sample sizes less than 100 plate appearances, which makes me a lot less confident in the numbers that we've used. So we get rid of Nick York, Garrett Mitchell, and Jacob Melton. That leaves Denzel Clark and O'Neal Cruz. Both of these players are very similar, unsurprisingly. They are toolsy all-around players. I will have to side with O'Neal Cruz though, as his quality of contact was significantly better than Clark's last year, which is an extra added data point increasing the confidence in Cruz's future. He will join Jack in the final round, but once again, we are nowhere close to done, as we have a whole other set of players to sort through now, the pitchers. We just went through 631 hitters, but now we have to do a similar process for 542 pitchers. This time, using a similar approach, the data reveal 3 main archetypes of pitchers that broke out. The first one is what I'm going to call the next step pitcher. These are pitchers that are already productive. They had an average ERA and FIP in the mid-3s, a WAR of 2 to 3. One thing that these guys had though is very promising and very balanced underlying numbers. They had a high stuff plus, a high location plus, and a high pitching plus. Stuff Plus is a model that measures pitchers' raw stuff in terms of velocity, shape, and makeup of their pitch mix. Location Plus does the same thing, except measuring how valuable the pitcher's locations were based on situation and count. This allowed them to take the next step in their game to become Cy Young level pitchers. Think Christopher Sanchez from last season, Sandy Alcantara from 2022, or Tarek Skubal in 2024. The next archetype is the pure stuff guy. This pitcher, unlike the first type, may not be a super established pitcher. They may have not thrown many innings or have yet to put together a super productive season, but what they are good at is missing bats. These guys have a low zone contact rate, and even higher stuff plus than the previous archetype, and typically this comes with a lack of command or high walk rate and low location plus. This is Cole Ragans from 2024, Shohei Ohtani in 2022, or Justin Steele in 2023. They either got their control down, which turned them into a star, or their stuff started to shine more. The last type is the regression type. The regression pitchers are pitchers who just got unlucky in the past and should be better in the future. This archetype is largely filled with pitchers who had super high home run to fly ball rates, something that typically evens out over a large sample. Some examples of this type include Mackenzie Gore in 2024, Edward Cabrera in 2025, and Kyle Bradish in 2023. Okay, now with that out of the way, let's not forget about these 542 pitchers now. The first thing we have to do is the age. Just like the hitters, I want to prioritize younger pitchers as they have a much better chance of breaking out. This time we'll eliminate players older than 27. This is 1 year older, as pitchers do tend to have more breakouts later in their career compared to hitters based on the past data. This brings us to 230 pitchers. First, we'll focus on the next step archetype. In order to be in this category, we want a pitcher with at least 105 stuff plus and 105 location plus. 100 is league average, but 105 was the average of the breakouts. This is a super rare combination, as you can see. There are only 6 guys left. 2 of them are dominant relievers, and 1 of them is Paul Skeens. I want a starter here, so Cade Smith and Jeremiah Estrada are not going to be considered, and of course, Paul Skeens will not be considered. It would be something to pick the reigning Cy Young winner as a breakout candidate. This leaves me with 3 guys that I am in love with: Chase Burns, Reed Detmers, and Spencer Schwellenbach. Now, unfortunately, the day I'm writing this script, we got very, very bad news with Spencer Schwellenbach, and he's going to miss at least 60 games at the start of the season, so for obvious reasons, I'm not going to take him. That leaves us with 2. And you know what? I'm just going to put both of these guys into the final round, because I love them both that much. Now it's time to look at the pure stuff candidates. The first filter is to get pitchers who miss bats often. In this case, it'll be pitchers who have a zone contact rate of less than 83%. These guys can throw their pitches in the zone, and hitters still won't make contact with them often. This narrows it down to 51 names. Now we filter out pitchers who have great raw stuff, proving that this probably isn't a fluke, with a stuff plus over 106, the average of this archetype. This time, there are a lot of relievers in this group, and a guy who won't be pitching in 2026, so we gotta get rid of those guys. This leaves us with Eury Perez, Jacob Misiorowski, Bubba Chandler, Cole Reagans, Hunter Green, and Paul Skeens and Reed Detmers again. Obviously, let's get rid of the last 4. They are either already really good or have already been picked. Out of these 3, which one does the data favor? Eury Perez. He has the best stuff according to both his own contact rate and stuff plus. He also has the worst command, which might seem counterintuitive. Why pick the guy with the worst command? Well, because that means he has the most room to grow. Eury Perez is on to the finals. Now we're out of room. Well, the real reason I decided to take 2 players from the first category is because, well, they are a lot more exciting than the last category. If you're curious who the data likes for the regression breakouts, it's Shane Baz, Ben Brown, and Kumar Rocker. I would not be surprised if all those guys had improved seasons, but it probably won't be as big as the others we've talked about. With that out of the way, it's time to go to the final round. Jack Caglione, Oneil Cruz, Chase Burns, Reed Detmers, Eury Perez. Let's go through each of these players' cases real quick. First up is Jack Caglione. Caglione was drafted 6th overall in the 2024 draft by the Royals and immediately lived up to the hype in the minors. Unfortunately, the majors did not go well. Negative 1.6 WAR is all you need to know. But there were a ton of positives, which is why he's in this video. Here's a chart showing all hitters who had at least 200 plate appearances in 2025 with their zone contact rate and bat speed. Typically, you can see as players swing harder, they make less contact, not that surprising, except if your name is Jack Caglione. He had a bat speed of 77.4 miles per hour, one of the fastest in the league, and slightly ahead of Aaron Judge. He also made a ton of contact with a zone contact rate of 89.3%. That puts him in the company of guys like Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Corbin Carroll, Pete Alonso, Gunnar Henderson, and many more offensive stars. This is very reminiscent of Junior Caminero in 2024, which I talked about in the video I made before last season. Much like Caminero, Caglione mainly ran into a launch angle problem in the majors last year, hitting far too many ground balls and not enough balls in the air to take advantage of his elite bat speed. The ceiling is so high for him as a hitter, and he really is just one adjustment away from reaching it. Next is Oneil Cruz. When it comes to filling out the all-around archetype, there's not many that do it better than him. He has the power, obviously, the second fastest average bat speed last year behind only Giancarlo Stanton. He has the speed, 93rd percentile sprint speed. He's now a plus defender in the outfield. His walk rate dramatically increased last year to nearly 12%, and he was also one of the best base runners in the league last year. Only 2 problems. He doesn't make enough contact, and he doesn't hit the ball in the air. The good part is, I think he only needs to fix one of these problems to become a 4 to 5 win player. If he starts hitting the ball in the air, there is nothing stopping him from hitting 40 home runs next year. If he makes more contact, then he'll become a much more consistent hitter and make him a complete player. Kind of reminds me of Maikel Garcia, who had great all-around underlying numbers in 2023, but was very bad in 2024. He finally made the adjustment in 2025, making a lot more contact and turned into one of the best players in the league. Certainly an interesting case. But is it as interesting as Chase Burns? Some people may have forgotten just how good Chase Burns has been after being the number 2 overall pick because of some rough run prevention numbers in the majors. A 4.57 ERA is going to be cause for concern in some circles. In the data circle though, that is not the case. Burns was already pretty good last year with a 2.65 FIP and a 1.4 F4. That's why he's in the next step archetype. There were only 6 pitchers to record a higher strikeout rate than Burns last year. He's had this success because of his elite stuff, but he's also been great at commanding it. He had a 115 stuff plus, great, but also a 106 location plus, meaning not only is he not walking hitters, he's also putting pitches in valuable locations, which builds on top of that already elite stuff. He had a pitching plus last year of 121, which is the model that measures stuff and location combined, and that was the 3rd highest of all starters last year. It's very highly correlated with future success. Tarek Skubals was 114 the year before he won his first Cy Young, Sandy's was 117 before he won the Cy Young unanimously in 2022, and these numbers were both near the top of the league, just like Burns is now. Next is Reed Detmers. A lot of the same things I just said about Chase Burns apply here. Detmers is coming off a very different road though. This will be his 6th year in the majors. Last year he went to the bullpen for the first time in his career. He struggled as a starter before with a 4.9 ERA and a 4.27 FIP. His biggest weakness was that he gave up so many home runs. This was a product of a very low ground ball rate of 36.6%. As a reliever though, that problem was fixed. The ground ball rate was higher, and there were much less home runs being given up. That was a product of his reshaped slider. He threw it over 2 miles per hour faster with a higher release point and more downward movement. This increased its vertical movement versus comparable sliders by 4 inches. Along with the higher release point and steeper approach angle, this pitch generated a ton of ground balls. Batted balls against this pitch had an average launch angle of 1 degree. In 2024, the average launch angle on the slider was 18. He has always had great stuff, but last year, his command was the best it's ever been, with a 112 location plus and a 9.4% walk rate. He has all the makings of making a big jump as a starting pitcher for 2026. And lastly, we have Eury Perez. Believe it or not, despite debuting 3 years ago now, he is a year younger than Paul Skeens. If you want to talk about stuff, Eury Perez has the stuff. Perez is 6'8", but releases his fastball only 6 feet off the ground. This weird relationship makes Perez's fastball have a unique shape, which is great for a pitcher. That's not it though. Despite this lower release point and arm angle, he's still able to get above average IVB, induced vertical break on his fastball, which makes his shape even crazier. It's about as close as you can get to a rising fastball that you will ever see. His command could use some improvement though. His walk rate was low last year at 8.3%, but he missed a lot of pitches in the zone, which led to a pretty high hard hit rate and lower ground ball rate. He has a bunch of room for improvement, he's not even 23 years old yet, and he has the raw stuff that you can't teach. A pretty perfect breakout candidate. We started with 1,173 players, got it down to 5, and now we need to take the final step to narrow it to 1. At this point, I'm throwing the data out the window. I'm not going to live in a world where my decisions are solely based on the outcomes of machine learning. So I'm going to make the final decision based on my own gut, and I encourage you to make yours. This guy's got the it factor. There's no it factor stat, but this guy's got it. He's got the confidence, the aggressiveness, and most importantly, the skills to be a Cy Young type pitcher in the near future. The only thing holding him back is how many innings his team will let him throw. And that's why the 2026 official Walytics breakout candidate is Chase Burns. Who do you think will break out in 2026? Thank you for watching, subscribe if you enjoyed, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.